Hello, hello, everyone. All right. So it is, I should have looked at the date beforehand. It's January 15th. It is January 15th. I hope everybody is staying warm wherever they are. If you're watching this now or on replay, make sure to tell us where you're tuning in from and if there's snow on the ground there, because I'm curious. We have some snow, but it's melting here in Nashville. How about you, Christina? You would not have snow.
Okay, listen, I'm in Bakersfield, California, and today I was driving to a meeting this morning. It was dark, and my car had a light. First time I've ever seen it. I have my car for 10 years. It said ice may be on the road. We had frost on the golf course where I was at this morning. So that's about as we get, but we have.
That's pretty serious. That's pretty serious.
Yep. Yes.
So yeah, let us know where you're from. I am so excited today to be chatting with Christina, who has been one of my preferred vendors for years and years. We've recommended her and everything that she does because she is fabulous. So I love having her here. Last week we had a chat with Jackie. For those of you who are there, Jackie does taxes and tax planning and all the fun things. Now we're going to talk about Christina about financial reports and some of the bookkeeping side of things and troubleshooting and all the things today. And then next week I've got Myrnie coming on, who is in financial planning, and we're going to talk about some things a little bit outside of this specific business realm, but still related to money and what you want to be doing right now in the first quarter of the year. So excited to have you, Christina. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. Christina Springstead. As said, I'm in Bakersfield, California. My firm, Springstead Solutions, we really focus on bookkeeping. I am also a financial fitness formula and profit first certified. So I help coaching with cash flow. But where I've really seemed to excel in is I love the operational and financial combination. So I really work well with book cleanups, integrations, and other softwares. How do those come into play? And then how do we set up your financial foundation so it serves you well in the reports that you're running, so that you have reports that actually matter to you and your business? And just getting your bookkeeping up to date and finding a real niche with people who have someone in the house that is doing the bookkeeping, but they really need some sort of support. That's where we love to come in, is help support and train up the in-house person and be that one-to-one help if they need it, and then watch them grow, but also be overseeing to make sure everything's accurate.
That's awesome. I love that. I love just that ability to kind of partner with whoever's doing it on the in-house side, but be there when there are issues. And we're going to get into some troubleshooting here in a minute about what's happening right now, what's going on with people. They're trying to, it's January. All of a sudden we're like, okay, we got to get into our books. We got these 1099s that got to come out soon, right? Like we got to get organized. I think that's one of the things that sneaks up on people a lot. I know it sneaks up on me because I tend to think like I have till April, right? Like I have till April to get everything sorted and done, but that's the very end of the process, because with, 1099 deadline for the 1099 NEC at the end of January, it really behooves you to get organized as quickly as you can. So if you're watching this, that means you're probably already in the throes of it. If you're not watching this, it's probably because you're going to ignore it as long as you can. No shade. You're not here to defend yourself. So maybe you're watching this in April and you're like, oh, maybe I should have watched this in January. So give us kind of like, we're talking about understanding financial reports, right? So what would you say is like the most important thing? And I know that this is a loaded question, right? But where do people start? It's January. Where do people start when they're trying to get organized?
So I think the biggest thing is, do you have to submit your 1099s, right? Like that's the biggest thing is your P&L in order? And do you have all of your transactions that you've paid out to people that need a 1099? Do you have that in line? One, if you don't, and you need W-9s, gosh, start today, right? Actually start when you wrote the check, but if you haven't done that, start today, because sometimes those are real hard to get. So I am finding, and I'm even closing out clients' books that we actually do the full service books for. And even though we do the books, things happen, and bookkeeping errors can happen. And one of the things I would recommend is really doing a dive into who did you pay. And I have found, Jimmy, you and I talked about a P&L and a balance sheet, and there's tons of trainings on those, including Jamie's Financial Fitness Basics. Highly recommend it. That's where you can really go in and dive in and understand like both of those very common reports. But there are some supplemental reports, and I'm going to talk about QBO because we're a QBO firm. that really can help you dive in, because sometimes you'll be like, I feel like I paid this person. They're not showing up on the report correctly. I don't know what's going on. Do I 1099 or not? And although maybe you've never gotten caught for not 1099ing properly, if you ever did, the fines for not filing what you're supposed to are not pretty. And so there's an amazing report in QuickBooks called Expenses by Vendor Summary. And I have found this to be an amazing report. I run it for last year. I sort it by the amount spent. And then I look for everything 600 and above and go through and say, okay, what did I do with this person? Would they need a 1099? The other really important thing that I found is there's this pesky one called not specified that shows up in there that you want to dive into, because I have found, you know, when you're data entering and then you accidentally put your expense to a customer or you make your vendor's name a customer, what happens is they don't show up. So they're not showing up on your 1099 report. We have found a ton, especially from other people helping them get their books together, where, you know, maybe they spent money with Springstead Solutions, but they put me in as a customer. And now I'm not showing up on the 1099 report because I'm in this pesky not specified vendor. So I go and comb through that and have found ways to make corrections. So that then makes a game changer. So using other supplemental reports like that, again, sort it by the amount spent, dive into anything that is like an unknown vendor name, and check if there's one and there's a name for a person in there, that means they're a customer and not a vendor, and you can get that cleaned up. So I highly recommend diving into that. That was just a game changer to give me and my clients peace of mind that we knew everything was correct, and then we could dive in from there and then weed out those credit card payments, people, and then 1099 for what's left over.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly a great place to start. I think people, when we talk about understanding financial reports, I automatically go to your P&L and your balance sheet. But if you're using an accounting software and you go to the reporting section of that accounting software, there are a bajillion D reports, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it depends on how you put the information in, whether those reports are going to be accurate and useful, right? But go click around and see what's out there, because there's a lot more than you think. And so when we're reviewing, especially for the full year, I love the point on unspecified, right? The terms, this is the ex-auditor in me. If something is unspecified, if something is uncategorized, or if something is miscellaneous, I'm looking at it. Those are people always ask me, like, what do you look for when you're looking at your financial reports? And those are ones that stick out. And not only do they stick out to me, they stick out to the IRS. So those are important things to look at as well before we get into tax time.
Yeah. And you don't want those people sending you mail. You don't want to get their mail. So and I love that you said the uncategorized, because that's a really important too. I do work with my clients and say, you know, hey, if throughout the year you need to get your reconciliations done, you really need to understand, and you don't know, throw it into uncategorized, but it's a placeholder, people. It doesn't live there, right? And so eventually we've got to go out. And so now's the time to go into all those uncategories. The other one, Jamie, is undeposited funds. This is a huge one. And I think April's talked about this on a past live with you, but so much happens in there. And if you've got some random, really large balance in there, that's an indicator for me. You might have created double income in your books. And if you go file your taxes and your P&L is saying something, your income for that probably came through the bank feed and you put it through, but then you left the payment in the undeposited funds. So if there's anything in there, go in and see what it is and get that cleaned up too, because you could end up paying more taxes and you're not even really aware why.
And hire help if you don't have it, if that's the case. I highly recommend it, because those types of things, you can do more harm than good trying to go in there and recategorize things, right? So I am a big proponent of, if you're seeing issues, and that's normal, it happens, right? It happens to the best of us. I have had those exact same issues before. So just hire someone to help you kind of figure it out, because if you could spend 8 hours trying to figure it out and then mess it up even more and then have to hire somebody. So I just highly recommend, like, those, if you have issues there's probably an issue that's going to be ongoing that you need to fix. That's like just your process, right? It's not just fixing, backwards. It's going to happen again if you don't fix why it's happening. Right.
I'll tell you another thing that's really helpful that I found for a lot of clients is, if you're seeing sales receipts in your undeposited funds, what that means is that you might have automatic drafts set up in QuickBooks and the payment failed. So if you are seeing sales receipts, we've actually found that with a couple of clients where for months, a payment was failing for a client and they didn't recognize it. They didn't realize it because, you know, they got so many coming in and they got their bulk deposit and they call it good. Well, then trying to go back to that client and say, hey, your payment actually never cleared for 7 months. Most people are like, I can't really go do that. You kind of feel like you got to eat it. The client didn't notice it. So you could be missing out on money. Maybe it's legit and you need to go troubleshoot what happened to that sales receipt. Did the card expire or whatever? Was there fraud and they got a new one? That's a really great place to find that too.
And I think that's a really just overall the idea that our financial statements, we're not just doing this for taxes, y'all, right? Like there are real implications here. Like in that situation, you might realize you didn't get paid, right? That's not just a reporting thing. That's not just a bookkeeping thing. That is a money in your bank account thing. So that's the beauty. I think there's just, you know, we think of it just as this record keeping and it is what it is, but there are many things that can actually cause you to either, right? If it is a bookkeeping thing, maybe pay more taxes than you need to, maybe pay less taxes than you need to and get in trouble for it later on down the road, right? Yep. Or in these situations, right, you can use your financials to find real money that you may not realize, right? I've literally done that before, Christina. And I'm like, I teach this stuff. And I still had a situation where I realized we made a switch over. We didn't realize it was no longer drafting one of our auto payments that somebody was paying us. And then I had to sit and think like, what do I do now? And we had to kind of figure out, do we try to, you know, see if we can get this money recovered? Do we leave it? Do we kind of met in the middle there, which is what I recommend. Don't just let it go. People are reasonable and they understand, right? But like it's happened to me too. So it's not, if you think like it's just you, it isn't.
No, it happened to me as well. And in my industry, right? Because it's like, you know, the mechanic's car doesn't run, the whatever. I was in a position when I was growing, it was like the bookkeeper wasn't really always on top of her books. And that was a lesson because I went back to my client and, you know, of course you're thinking, even the finance person couldn't catch this. And it's been really helpful where my clients have been like, thank you so much, because you don't want to have that weird, awkward. So anyway, those uns definitely. And then that expenses by vendor summary, which amazingly in QuickBooks, if you click, it is the first one listed. And I don't think that's by accident. So
no, because it's very important. And then I would also say too, like, ask my accountant. Yes. I have legitimately seen screenshots of tax returns where in the miscellaneous section, there is an ask my accountant with a number next to it in your filed taxes. Please do not do that. The IRS, that's like ding, ding, ding. Like,
Well, and additionally, if you have a tax preparer who is putting that into your tax form, maybe consider a conversation or a change.
To put it mildly.
And that's, it's just so important to be having someone, you know, and if you're not getting your books done by someone and you're doing them yourself, there are services like mine or other people who would go in and just do an audit of your books to tell you, hey, are they in good enough shape to file? If you're really not sure, you know, maybe you're like, hey, I don't want someone doing my books. But I just really wonder what condition are they in? You know, a lot of us call them health checks or, you know, QuickBooks. That's an option as well if you're just really concerned.
Yes, that's so true. And I think there's so much value to having another set of eyes on it to be able to say, like, here are some of the things that I see, right? That you might want to look into, and then you can decide what to do from there. But I think so often we just don't know what we don't know, right? I mean, we have no idea. So dive into those reports, go over to, you know, check out the reporting section and just see what's there, see what looks weird. And again, if you don't have a bookkeeper, you can ask those questions too, to be like, hey, this report shows me this, like, you know, I don't understand, or what does this mean? Or this looks wrong, right? Then you might want to find one because it can be so helpful. And there's, again, a lot more there that you can explore. So what else, any other kind of troubleshooting where people are at right now and they're like, okay, I got to figure this out. Any other tips, any other things you see?
Yeah, I would. So we talked about the profit, loss, and balance sheet that most people run. I love the profit and loss detail report and the balance sheet detail report. There is one for each where you can literally see every charge that went into each bucket within there. We have found that really helpful. And I'm actually going through with my, make sure everything ended up and you something in the profit and loss that really was a draw that doesn't belong there. You know, really going through and looking at there, and I'm trying to train my people as like, when you're spending your stuff, because lots of people love to run all sorts of stuff through their business. And, that's a conversation for you and your tax person, but does it really belong there? And I always say, imagine an IRS auditor comes and says, hey, is this reasonable for your business? And if it's not, let's really discuss what's happening here. But that has been a bunch of errors where we've had things that were true business expenses actually ended up in a draw and didn't belong there. And so we actually had to swap some things. So that's really helpful too, because the P&L is just telling you the ultimate number. But if you dive into the detail, you can see everything that ended up in there. And then that number will make more sense to you too. Because sometimes at the end of the year, like, how'd I spend $30,000 in restaurants? Well, then you can go back and be like, oh, okay, I hosted a party, or I did this, or whatever it might be. I love those reports to help find errors and get clarity of what you're doing. And at the end of the year, it's really like oh, I need to drop that vendor I meant to. I signed up for that trial and never canceled it. So that's a helpful one too.
And I would say too, when you're looking at like your P&L or your P&L detail, run it comparatively. So I always say, like, people ask, like, how do you look at this? How do you even make sense of it? And in a vacuum, like, there's probably not much you're going to garner from it. You might see something that looks weird that you can drill into. Yeah. But when you have like a comparing period, like maybe it's, this year, like 2024 versus 2023, and you can see those trends. And that's where you can be like, well, actually, that doesn't jive with what I felt like happened in my business, right? Like, it's showing this, but that's not, that doesn't seem to jive. And so I find comparative reporting so much more useful. Now, that does require being consistent. So that's one of the things, right? If you're categorizing things one way one year and one way next, or even month to month, it's changing. It's gonna make it so it's harder to really make sense of your financials. So just, keep consistency in mind. If you need to reclassify some things, do that to make it make sense. But yeah, as you're looking at it, just start high level, start comparative, and then drill in, right? Just keep drilling and being like, what's going on behind this? Okay, what's under this, right?
Yeah, and QuickBooks they make it easy. You just click, if the number is hyperlinked, that's where you drill. You just click and it opens up. And I will add to that, Jamie, before you go and do your comparative, please make sure your bank feed is clear, right? If you've got 3 months of stuff in there and then you do a comparative and you're like, ooh, I saved a bunch, and then you don't have, that's an indicator as well. I have had a lot of clients I've come to work with, and they've had a bookkeeper, and they've been reconciled through the end of last month, but there's 300 transactions in the bank feed. And these are a little bit warning signs too. So to be looking for that. And then just to pair with your comparative, I also love the P&L percent of income or percent of revenue. Is great to see, like, why is my insurance 22% of the revenue I'm bringing in? This is every expense will tell you how much percent of what you brought in income. That's really helpful too.
And the beautiful thing is, you're not just looking for errors, although you might find some, right?
Yep.
You're also getting actual useful insights into your business that you can use to make business decisions. So this is my little soapbox that I get up on, right? Which is like, you're the CFO of your own business. If you don't have one, it's you're the one making those decisions. And so if you're looking at your reports and making these observations, you can make changes. You can go be like, you know what? I need to go get some insurance quotes because this seems ridiculous, right? Like, you can take action steps from the things that you notice. So it's not just about like, is this clean for taxes? That's great. That's super important. But it is informing how you run your business. And once you get in the habit of that and realize how beneficial it is. And again, looking at some of these other reports, not just a P&L, but like other things that are helpful and insightful for you, for the type of business you have, then you can utilize that year round. And you might actually find yourself, maybe you only look at your finances once a year. Well, then all of a sudden you realize, actually, it's really useful to be keeping my bookkeeping up all year long. Because I have access to real-time reports and real-time insights into my business. And now I also, bonus, don't have to scramble for taxes, right?
Exactly. Yes. And then you go to try to get help, and, we're all maxed out trying to help people with all the last minute stuff. One other helpful one that I love, Jamie, and you cover this in, I think, Financial Fitness Formula, is the sales by products and services. So if you invoice out of QuickBooks and you do that, that is a really helpful report. And if you're not breaking down what you're selling by a product and service, totally worth looking into. QBO has some great free videos on how to utilize them, but that's a great one to see, how many of this am I selling? What was the average price I sold it for? And maybe you're really passionate about something, but the sales are in the tank, and it's, do you pause it? Do you put more effort into it? So I love that report as well.
You know, what's funny is I have decided we're actually splitting, like, just this is a real time kind of conversation, right? But
Yeah.
when I was doing that work, and I keep up with it and I know what we sell, we have two main kind of sources of income in our business. We have our own digital products that we sell, and then we also have our affiliate income. Well,
Mhm.
it used to be a small percentage and now it's growing a lot. And so as we get like sponsorship opportunities and things, so my goal for 2025 is I'm really splitting them into two very different divisions. I'm going to make sure that I'm, really being careful about expenses and how I categorize them. I'll probably use class tracking for it in
Yeah.
QuickBooks, but there are different ways to do it in different accounting softwares. Um, and just really figure out how profitable am I in each of these like kind of different verticals, right? Like
Yeah.
how because I think there are some insights to that I've already realized that taking forward, I'm like, man, this side is making less money, but it's way more profitable than this
Yes.
other side, right? And that gives you some ideas, some things to change, right? Maybe
Mhm.
you're getting rid of a product, maybe you're adding something, maybe you're structuring things differently. That's the fun stuff. And the numbers help you make those decisions, right? Like your CFO can help your CEO, which both of them are you, by the way, probably, but
Yeah.
like your CFO can help back up. Your CEO is trying to make decisions. What do we offer? What changes do we need to make? If you have the numbers to back it up from your CFO, i.e., the other
Mhm.
side of you, right? It's going to make it a lot easier to make informed decisions that are going to actually get the results that you want.
Yeah. The other thing I think that's really helpful about what we're talking about here is looking at those reports is we all start our business with a passion for what we're doing, right? Like that's why we get into this and live the American dream of, working nonstop and 7 days a week and all the great stuff
Woo-hoo!
with this passion. Yes. And the numbers can come in and kind of be your logical counterpart, right? Like they're there for you to tell a story that maybe your heart isn't ready to hear, or your heart wasn't like, it's something that you weren't even aware is like, wow, I did this just kind of for, it was just an extra bonus value add. But man, the numbers are speaking to me that this is what my people want. And it can just tell a different part of the story. Because when we're running our business, sometimes emotions are so high that it's hard to really see what your business can be telling you. And that's why I love financials and what we do is because if you, the bookkeeping is really the foundation, the foundation of what you need. You need to be financially healthy to keep going. And it just tells you so much in so many different ways. And so once you embrace it, and at the end of the day, you do not have to be a numbers person. You say this all the time, Jamie, because the software does the numbers for you. You just need to understand where it needs to go and how the system works and where you're putting it. So
Yeah.
it really is a lot of fun. And to see the story of your business being told from that logical perspective, non-emotional, is pretty cool.
And they don't have to be a buzzkill, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that there's an assumption that the numbers and that are going to be like the Debbie Downer.
Yep.
They're going to be
Yeah.
like, well, actually, right? Like that's like the vibe that we get from like numbers people, first of
Yep.
all, right? But they can actually be extremely freeing. And that
Mhm.
when you shift that to realize, oh wait, this is data I can use
Yep.
to free me up and to use them to work smarter, not harder. They don't have to be like the buzzkill, right? Like they don't have
Yeah.
to be that Debbie Downer. And I think sometimes we avoid looking at them because we assume that's what it's going to be, but it isn't always that. Maybe there are
Right.
some hard truths we might have to like be like, oh, my baby, right? Like,
Yep.
but you don't have to, there's not one answer. I think we think like, oh, if this product isn't profitable, I'm going to need to get rid of it. No, there are many, if you love that product or if you want to keep selling it, having that information can help you make it more profitable. Maybe you just need to increase the price. Maybe you need to figure out how to do it cheaper. Maybe you need to figure out how to bundle it with something else. Like the numbers don't tell you the answer, but they can help diagnose the problem.
Yep.
Right? Like that's the way I would look at it, is that like it's not going to force you to do anything. It's
Mhm.
just going to help you diagnose if there's a problem or on the flip side, an opportunity, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like what we talked about is the opportunity for me. I found I had a lot of health checks for people and realized that's what a lot of people wanted was
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily want me to do their bookkeeping all day long. And I love that part to see like, here's what I found. You did a really great job here. Okay, here's where you could use some support. And people wanted that. It caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it really.
Yeah. The aha moments you get from really diving into things
Mhm.
are so incredibly valuable, and they can open up a whole world that you hadn't even thought of yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like we think we could like rely on just like our brain without any of the data to go into it, just like we need to think hard enough and we'll know what to do, right? And
Yep.
I agree. Like there is a piece of gut, there is a heart, there is all parts of it are important and shouldn't, one is not more important than the other. But when they're all in agreement, when your heart and your gut and your numbers and your mind, right, are like, yes,
Yes.
it's like full steam ahead. And it just gives you that wind at your back to do what you already know you need to do. Right. So just let that like synergy happen. Don't think that the numbers are gonna just come in and be be the buzzkill. They don't have to be.
Well, and the beautiful thing is you can get all the coaching and talk to all the people, and I'm a complete proponent of that. The numbers are just not unbiased, right? They're not coming in with they are what they are, and they're not sitting here trying to talk you into or out of anything. They're just giving you information to use to help you move forward. So
and I think too, like sometimes we avoid looking at it too because of the feelings and the emotions that come up with it, because it's not the numbers making us feel ashamed, it's ourselves and the way that we're perceiving it, right? And so like that's why I really teach people that it's data, it's information, and it's what you do with it. And the real shame is not making any changes and just continuing down the same road, right? But if you can learn from what you've done in the past, that's like, and grow from it, that's where, all the magic happens in the future. The more we can not personalize it so much, and it might take a minute, right? Like if you're like, man, I spent like way too much on these like coaching programs that did not pan out, right? Like I've seen that time and time again. There's some great ones. There's some not so great ones. People have like been unprofitable because they were paying for $30,000 coaching packages, even though they made $50,000 in revenue, right? And it's like, we will beat ourselves up rather than like use that to say, okay, this is good data. Here's how this experience is going to change how I move forward and the choices that I make. Right. And then we're like, cool, it was a learning experience. Done.
Exactly. And I will say if you're looking at your financials, and this is what I love to tell my people too, is if you're reading this report and you're like, I don't even know what this is saying. One, your chart of accounts, your accounting list is probably not set up for your business, right? Like we can rename things that make sense and bucket stuff together. And, a lot of people just use the chart of accounts right out the gate from QuickBooks. That needs to be tweaked for you and what you're doing. And work with a financial professional. I get through and walk through. Do you understand what these are? Because it's not everybody's strong suit, and that's okay. But if you look at the reports and you're like, that's great, there's numbers, I don't know what it's telling me. That's where some support would come in. Again, your program is fantastic for teaching that, but let's tweak that, right? Like it's fully customizable in all of those systems. Make it work for you.
It doesn't have to be like, yes, you're going to use your P&L for taxes, but that doesn't mean it needs to look like your tax return, right?
Exactly.
Like
It shouldn't.
No, because that's not what you need to make decisions in your business, right? So typically your P&L, you want to be able to add it up such that you can easily kind of enter in that information on your tax return. But in general, like people we get so many questions about where do I put this type of expense? And there's usually the answer is like, what makes sense to you, right? Like there are some that are more prescriptive, but on the whole, if you've got an expense, it's like, well, this could be a contractor, this could be an advertising expense, this could be that. And it's like, what makes sense? And then be consistent about it. And it's probably fine.
Right? And there's, for me with my clients is I have a standardized chart of accounts that we use. It includes numbers because I'm a fan of coding and like you just like use codes instead of trying to remember what it was called. And our chart of accounts it's a starting place and it's very tax preparer friendly. So my CPAs love it because they can use it, but it's also good for a business owner to understand what's going on. And then we can tweak it. Also, tip, do not throw every line item you can think of in your P&L because we can do supplemental reports, right? We can drill down. So your P&L should not be 6 pages long. We've done too much here. And so we want to condense that. So when you're looking at it, it makes sense. And then if you have questions, well, why were my utilities so high? Then let's dig in and see what was PG&E, what was, SoCal Gas, what was whatever. But
if your
P&L is really long, we need to tweak that down. So this is high level decision making, and all of those supplemental reports we're talking about in QuickBooks can give you the drill down data.
Yes, the data's in there. You don't have to have, and I literally had this conversation yesterday with somebody who was like, well, I need more rows on this thing. And I'm like, if you need more rows than this, like that's too much, right? You have too much, and you need to start kind of putting them into groups and then know that you have the backup data, right? Like but you don't need to have everything have a separate line item, because that's how you get a P&L that's completely unwieldy and completely useless.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And your P&L, the purpose is quick over, like big CEO type decisions, whether you're a company of one or not, like that's it. Yes. Then we drill down when we're assessing and analyzing. So,
and there are different ways, right? Depending on what you're using for your accounting software, there are different ways to set up, again, like QuickBooks has class tracking. So, some people, again, I have those two different, I have affiliate income, digital products. I don't need to make a revenue, digital products, revenue, affiliate income. Like I have some of those, and I actually am redoing my P&L because over the last, 7 years, it's gotten bigger and bigger. It doesn't ever get smaller. It gets bigger. And so I actually did a switch over this weekend because I was recording it for YouTube, which is coming soon. The switch from QuickBooks to Xero. I wanted to go through it and see. People are like, how hard is it? I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. And I went through it, and it was a great opportunity to I was like, I'm not bringing all this in here. Like we are streamlining, we are making this like way more high level than what it's gotten to. So if it's been a while, like it's a good exercise to go through. You don't have to start in a new system to do it. You can go into your chart of accounts and make what changes you want to. But it is helpful to feel like fresh and new and okay, like we're cleaning it up for the new year. So that's, if your reports are not super helpful or they feel unwieldy, make it a goal to say, to either work with the bookkeeper, if you're comfortable doing it yourself, let's clean this up a little bit. Let's make this more helpful, right? There's so many tools for customization in these accounting softwares that are, so few of them are utilized. But just know you can do what you want. It's your month.
Exactly. It's exciting.
I know, exactly. Hopefully that's a little bit freeing. Okay, so we're at our 30 minutes. So I'm going to sum it up. I know that went really quick. We could probably, every time we talk, I'm like, we could keep talking about this for a long time. But let me send, you have something that, what is it, a checklist?
Yeah. So I have a couple of freebies on my website, and the link that I gave you is for that. One of them is an end of year checklist. So I know we're talking about financial reports and this kind of there, but just things to make sure that you're getting together at this time of year. So free download, free for your name and your email, I guess. But put it in there. It'll come to you. Great checklist to use. And then there's a couple of other items in there too.
And if people want to reach out directly to you, how would you prefer they do that?
So if they visit the website there on the home, and I think every page has a contact me, and then there's a little form that comes up, and fill it out, and I'll get that and reach back out.
Awesome. And I recommend doing that as soon as possible if you want to work directly with Christina, because it's January, y'all.
It is the Super Bowl of bookkeeping. Okay. So I just said this the other day. I did a live. Everybody thinks April, right? Like March and April for taxes. If you have a bookkeeper friend, bring them coffee, check in on them, because they're not sleeping right now. So we're all happy. We're in our mode and all the things, but we are busy. So if we haven't called you back, forgive us. Your
tax pros are probably chilling right now. They're just waiting. They're kind of like, okay, nobody's given them their stuff to file yet. It's the bookkeepers right now that need the coffee. So that's a good reminder. Check on your bookkeeping friends right now, y'all.
Absolutely.
General good advice. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Christina. This was so much fun. I love having you on the channel, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.